Chapter 1. The Last Confession. Father Elias sat alone in the dimly lit confessional, the scent of old wood and burning candles filling the air. It had been an uneventful evening at St. Augustine's Church, until the whispering began. At first, he thought it was the wind slipping through the cracks of the ancient building. But the voice grew closer. A shiver crawled down his spine as he realized it was coming from the other side of the confessional. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." The voice was wrong, distorted, layered, as if multiple people spoke at once. A sickening unease settled in Elias's gut. He forced himself to remain calm. "What is your sin, my child?" Silence. Then, a whisper so faint it felt like it was inside his head. "I watched them suffer, and I liked it." Elias's blood ran cold. He peered through the wooden slats, but all he could see was darkness. No figure, no face. The confessional suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Then came the scratching. Long, slow, deliberate strokes against the wooden divider. Clawing. Elias gripped his cross tightly. "Who are you?" he demanded. The response was a laugh, a sound so low and guttural it made his stomach twist. Then the whisper returned. "I am the reason you pray." The candlelight flickered. A shadow passed beneath the door. And then, nothing. Elias hesitated before stepping out of the confessional. The church was empty, but when he turned back, he saw the seat where the penitent had been sitting. It was burnt, charred black, as if someone had been incinerated right there. Chapter 2. The Missing Children. Black Hollow, a small town on the outskirts of nowhere, had never been known for much, except now for its disappearances. 6 children in the past month. No signs of struggle, no ransom notes, just gone. Detective Owen Grayson didn't believe in the supernatural. He believed in facts, evidence. But this case, none of it made sense. The latest victim was Daniel Price, a 10-year-old boy who vanished from his bedroom in the middle of the night. No open windows, no forced entry. His parents swore they heard nothing. But when Owen inspected the room, he found something unusual. Scratched into the wood of Daniel's closet door in shaky, desperate letters, "The devil is here." Owen exhaled sharply. A prank? A desperate plea? He didn't know. But something about the way the room felt, cold, thick with an unseen presence, made him uneasy. And then he noticed it. The faint scent of burning. Chapter 3. The Black Veil. Father Elias had spent his life battling evil in all its forms. But this was different. He sat in his study, flipping through old texts, searching for anything that could explain what he had encountered. And then he found it. A passage buried in a forgotten manuscript. "The devil does not hunt the weak. He hunts the faithful. For the faithful are the ones who know to be afraid." Elias swallowed hard. He turned the page, and there, beneath an inked sigil, was a warning. "When the air grows still and the shadows lengthen, he is near. He whispers first, then he takes." A sudden knock at the door made him jump. It was Owen Grayson. The detective's face was pale, his hands clenched into fists. "Father, I need answers." Elias studied him for a moment before stepping aside. "Then let's talk." Chapter 4. The Eyes in the Dark. Owen didn't believe in demons, but after seeing Daniel's room, after feeling the way the air pressed against him like a living thing, he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. "Tell me about the disappearances," Elias said, pouring a glass of whiskey. Owen exhaled. 6 kids, no patterns, no clues, except... He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "Look at this." He slid it across the table. Elias squinted at the screen, a security camera screenshot from one of the children's homes. At first there was nothing unusual, a normal bedroom. Then he saw it. In the corner, a shape. It was barely visible, hidden in the darkness, but its eyes, its burning red eyes, stood out like embers in the night. Elias's stomach dropped. "That's not human." "I know." Silence. Then Owen leaned forward. "What the hell are we dealing with, Father?" Elias closed his eyes, the memory of the confessional returning. Something that doesn't just want to kill, it wants to make us suffer first. Chapter 5. The Prey. The town of Black Hollow didn't know it was already doomed. As Elias and Owen investigated, the town grew quieter. Houses felt emptier. People stopped talking about the disappearances, as if they were forgetting. And then, one night, it happened. A blackout. Every light in town flickered, then died. The air grew still. The streets, silent, and from the darkness, the whispers began. Soft at first, then louder and louder, until every house, every street was filled with them. Father Elias grabbed his cross. Owen reached for his gun. But deep down, they both knew it wouldn't matter, because the devil wasn't coming. He was already here. Part 2. The Gates of Hell. Chapter 6. The Town That Forgot. The blackout lasted exactly 13 minutes. When the lights flickered back on, everything seemed normal. The houses stood as they had before. The streets were empty but intact. Yet, something was wrong. Father Elias and Detective Owen Grayson walked through the town, searching for signs of disturbance. But the real horror came when they knocked on doors. No one remembered. The missing children? Gone from memory. Parents stared blankly when asked about their own sons and daughters. School records were wiped clean. Family photos showed empty spaces where children once stood. Owen grabbed a man by the shoulders. "Your daughter, Emily? Where is she?" The man furrowed his brow. "Emily?" His face twisted in confusion. I don't have a daughter." Owen's grip tightened. "You filed a missing persons report a week ago. Your wife was crying in my office." The man chuckled nervously. "Detective, I think you've got the wrong guy." Owen turned to Elias, heart hammering. "What the hell is this?" Elias swallowed hard. This wasn't just possession. This was something worse. This was erasure. The devil wasn't taking bodies, he was taking existence itself. Chapter 7. The House on Blackwood Lane. With the town under some kind of spell, Owen and Elias had only one lead left: Daniel Price's home. They arrived at the abandoned house on Blackwood Lane, where the boy had disappeared. The air was thick with the scent of burnt wood and something rotting. Owen pushed the door open, gun drawn. The house was dead silent. No wind, no creaking floorboards, no hum of electricity. Just emptiness. Then Elias saw it. The mirror. It stood in the hallway, large and old, its silver frame tarnished with age. But the reflection? Wrong. The hallway behind them looked normal in reality. But in the mirror, the walls were covered in blood. Handprints, scratch marks, faces of screaming children, mouths open in silent agony. And behind them, standing just over Owen's shoulder, a shadow with burning red eyes. "Down!" Elias screamed. Owen barely had time to react before the mirror shattered, shards flying through the air like knives. The house groaned, as if something inside it had just awakened. And then came the whispers, not outside, not in their heads. From under the floorboards, scraping, clawing, something was trying to get out. Chapter 8. The Devil's Mark. Owen and Elias ran out of the house as the walls began to twist and pulse, the wood rotting before their eyes. Once outside, they saw it. The house was changing. The roof shrank, the windows narrowed, and the entire structure contorted into something impossible, something not meant to exist in this world. "What the hell is happening?" Owen gasped. Elias's face was pale. "It's not a house anymore." Owen turned to him. "Then what is it?" Elias took a slow breath. "A gate." And as the last of the house melted into darkness, a single symbol burned into the ground where it stood. A perfect, black handprint. Owen clenched his fists. "We're not dealing with some ghost, are we?" Elias shook his head. "No." He looked at the sky where the clouds had begun to swirl, forming something unnatural. "We're dealing with the devil himself." Chapter 9. The Children's Eyes. With nowhere left to go, they returned to St. Augustine's Church. It was the only place in town untouched by the darkness, or so they thought. Inside, the air was still, too still. The candles, once flickering, burned motionless, as if frozen in time. Then they heard the footsteps, light, small, unnatural. They turned to the altar, and there stood the missing children. Their eyes were pitch black, their skin pale and stretched tight over their bones. They stood in a perfect line, unmoving, staring. Owen took a step forward. "Daniel," one of them, a small boy, smiled. "You're too late." A sudden blast of wind tore through the church, extinguishing every candle. The temperature plummeted. Then, from the rafters above, laughter. Rumbling, not human. Elias whispered a prayer under his breath. Owen reached for his gun, but deep down, they both knew. Weapons wouldn't help them now. The devil had already won. Part 3. The Last Prayer. Chapter 10. The Devil Speaks. The church doors slammed shut behind them. The walls creaked, the air thickened, and a low, rumbling voice filled the room. "You came too late." Owen turned, gun raised, but there was no source. The voice came from everywhere at once. The children stood still at the altar, their black eyes unblinking. Elias clutched his crucifix, sweat dripping from his brow. He whispered, "Leave them. Take me instead." The voice laughed. "You don't get to choose, Father." The pews began to rot, turning to ash. The floor cracked open, revealing something beneath, something moving. And then the children began to speak in unison. "We are already his." Their lips curled into unnatural grins and their skin began to peel, falling away like paper, revealing something else underneath. Not bones, not flesh, something ancient, something endless. Elias fell to his knees, shaking. "God protect us." The voice cut through him like a blade. "God isn't here." And then the ceiling collapsed. Chapter 11. The Black Sun. When Owen opened his eyes, he was no longer in the church. He was in a place with no sky, no ground, only endless darkness. The air was thick, suffocating, pressing against him like a living thing, and ahead of him, the children stood in a perfect line. But they weren't children anymore. Their limbs were too long, their smiles too wide, their eyes no longer eyes, just gaping, swirling voids, and behind them something towered over the darkness. A black sun, pulsing like a beating heart. Owen turned to Elias, who was beside him, shaking violently. Where are we?" Owen whispered. Elias's voice was barely a breath. "We are inside him." Owen clenched his fists. "No, we're going to stop this." The children stepped forward in perfect unison, and the voice spoke again, not from them, but from the air itself. "Stop? There is no stopping." A massive hand, made of shadows shifting and writhing, emerged from the black sun, reaching toward them. Owen raised his gun and fired. The bullet vanished into the darkness, swallowed whole. Elias gripped his cross. "I banish you in the name of Christ." The laughter returned, deeper, crueler. "He does not know you." Elias screamed, his skin splitting open, his eyes turning black as the void. Owen backed away. "Elias?" Elias turned to him, but it wasn't Elias anymore. It was something else, something wearing his skin. Owen ran. Chapter 12. The Last Man in Black Hollow. Owen didn't know how long he ran. There was no direction in this place, no walls, no end. And then, he was back in town. Black Hollow stood exactly as it had before. The streets were empty, the sky was gray, the church was still standing, but something was wrong. The air felt dead, there was no wind, no sound, and the people were gone. Not just the children, everyone. Owen staggered through the streets. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle, just emptiness. He walked to the police station. The doors were open, the lights on, but the desks were abandoned, cups of coffee still steaming, as if everyone had just vanished in an instant. And then, a voice, soft, right behind him. "You're the last one now." Owen turned and saw him, the devil. A man-shaped shadow, too tall, too thin, his face shifting like smoke. No eyes, no mouth, only emptiness. Owen raised his gun, but his hand began to disintegrate, the flesh turning to ash before his eyes. The devil tilted his head as if amused. "You ran, you fought, you prayed, and yet you are still here." Owen gritted his teeth. "Why?" The devil took a step closer. "Because I wanted you to see." Owen's body burned, his skin splitting, his blood boiling. He fell to his knees screaming, and then everything stopped. The pain, the fear, the world was silent. Owen looked up. Black Hollow was gone. Only darkness remained. And then at last, the devil whispered, "Now you understand." And Owen ceased to exist. Epilogue: The Forgotten Town. There is no record of a town called Black Hollow. No maps, no mentions in history books. It is as if it never existed. No one remembers the people who lived there. No one remembers the children. And if you ask about Detective Owen Grayson or Father Elias, you will be met with blank stares. Because they were never there. Because they never were. Somewhere in the depths of an empty void, the devil smiles and waits. For the next town. For the next prayer. For the next prey.